So what do you think about the difference between the hallucinogenic effect of various things, like the difference between acid and psilocybin? Run us
Oh,
through that.
good. Okay. Yeah. I've given some real thought to this. Okay. So I believe that mushrooms work on what I call the vertical axis. Okay. So it's the Akashic records, the geomorphic energy of the earth, compressed into this fungus. You ingest the fungus, you connect with the wisdom of the earth, and then it opens you to the divinity of the heavens.
Welcome to the Red Pill Sangha podcast. Diet, lifestyle, spirituality, tales of healing. The Sangha, the collective, is waking up. Links below to my autoimmunity consults, online course, books, support groups, and live events. Check them out. So welcome everybody back to the latest episode of Red Pill Sangha podcast. And I've been really looking forward to this one, making hundreds of notes. And I've finally captured Adam Schell. Now, I first found Adam, I think it was on Forbidden Knowledge News with our mutual friend, Chris Matthew. And we've both been on that podcast. I've been on a couple of times. And I've been looking for a load of info on psilocybin, because 43 odd years ago, I did massive amounts of tripping and blew my brains out, which we'll get into. And the last couple of years, I thought it would never happen, but I've been very, very attracted to it. And binging Adam's podcasts has been so informative for me. He's so incredibly eloquent. He's got such an amazing story. And you know, I'm so happy to have him on the podcast now. So welcome, Adam. Thank you so much for coming on.
No, thanks. Looking forward to it.
Cool. Now, in other podcasts, you've gone really into your history and your story. And so I'm going to link a couple of them below if people want to hear that, because that's incredible. But do please kind of précis it and the amazing stuff that's happened to you with the businesses and the turnaround of fortunes and the sort of collapse and then turnaround. You know, it's an amazing story, man. I mean, sum it up a bit.
All right, I'll do the express version. So this is basically how I got, everything that kind of led me to Brainsupreme. So I was a college football player, Big Ten linebacker, American football. And I went for a spring break with my brother down to Key West, Florida. This is my first kind of mushroom experience. And my brother and I are close. We love each other, but he's almost 5 years older than me. And as people know who have kids, like if you have a 4-year-old and a 9-year-old, like they're not into Pokemon at the same time. Like they're in different spaces. And if you've got a 10-year-old and a 15-year-old, you're always a little bit out of sync. But when you're 19 and 24, you kind of get back into sync. So my brother and I, we met in Florida at my mom's place, and we drove down to Key West, Florida. This was 1990, and he had a big old bag of mushrooms, and we didn't really know what we were doing. We got to Key West. This is 1990 Key West, Florida. It's the vestibule of the United States. It's like the southernmost point in the United States. You can see Cuba, and back then it was like voodoo mysteries and old world charms, kind of American antiquity. It was just wild and fabulous and really fascinating place filled with all kinds of interesting characters. It literally dropped out of America, hit the very bottom as far as you can go. So from a geographical standpoint, some also from a kind of metaphoric and emotional standpoint as well. So we go to this cafe, we drop these mushrooms in a big thing of tea, we crush them up, we put a little lemon, a little honey in there, and we drink this down, and like had the most amazing day of my life. Literally bonded with my brother. Just the experiences and the experiences in nature, the experience of interacting with people, like it was just so completely profound. Had an interaction with a Vietnam veteran who was 39 years old, just jumped out of the woods and was holding a pair of cruiser bikes. My brother was running into the bathroom. Not a threatening guy, kind of a sweet guy. And he just starts sharing with me. I'm in this completely altered state. And he just starts sharing with me how he has to live outside and he was captured during Vietnam. He was kept in a mud pit up to his neck. All the other battalion mates that he was captured with, they all died. He's the only one survived. And ever since then, he's had to live outside. He's 38 years old. I'm 19. And as I'm listening to him, I'd never had language come across so empathically to me before. Like literally, I was there, I was him, I was living this. And it dawned on me that, God, this happened to him at 19. He's now 38. So he's got twice his life. So he had an experience. And even though he's lived twice the lifetime, he still can't recover from that singular experience. So the impact and the fragility of our psychology and our emotions, and the impacts and ramifications of violence for just like, it so blew me away. I never forgot that experience. So like that was always there. And I'd done mushrooms a couple other times and they'd been interesting. So now cut to, I don't know, 35 years later. All right. And I had written a novel. It was called Tomato Rhapsody. It was everybody thought I was crazy. They thought I'd wasted my entire 30s working on this novel. It tells the comedic historical fiction of how the tomato makes it to Italy. And everybody speaks in rhyming verse. And it sold for $1.5 million in 4 days. It was supposed to be a big book, a big movie. Everything was going to hit. And literally from the purchase of the manuscript to the release of the novel, the whole world fell apart. We had the 2008, 2009 housing crisis. Amazon completely took over, tanked the publishing world. The number 1, 2, and 3 at the division of Random House that I was with all got fired. Everybody who was supporting my career, they all got fired. And then Michael Jackson died the day my novel came out. So, as a musician, like, like when the big fish, when something happens with the big fish, all the little fish suffer the most because everybody's writing about Michael Jackson. No one's covering the book. So like, the book and I lost reviews, I lost interviews because every culture writer in the country went on to Michael Jackson. And then, they canceled the second book. They canceled paperback. They canceled the audio book. Like it just went to fucking shit. So
oh man, I know exactly what you mean. Back in the mid 80s, late 80s, I was in a band that was signed to Stock Aitken Waterman, embarrassingly, because I'm much more of a sort of fusion and jazz guy. And I ended up in this band. And then the whole thing with Kylie Minogue blew up. And then we were completely sidelined. And I know exactly how that feels.
What's Kylie Minogue?
Kylie Minogue is an Australian singer who went massive worldwide and was under the same record label.
Oh yeah.
And so we just got completely shelved. No, I know where you're at, man. So yeah, carry on.
Yeah,
sorry.
no, that happens. That happens.
Yeah.
There was the comedian Black crap. He had a real heyday. They got pointing his finger. He had a joke about 9/11. He goes, somebody out there was like, fuck all my plans, like everything that he had planned, and some kind of cataclysmic, environmental, political, cultural event happens, and then so many other people like are the collateral damage to those events. And so in some way I was the collateral damage to Michael Jackson's untimely death. So I was basically mid 40s, and I got through this basically through through European football, through a soccer not-for-profit I had started for my then 3-year-old. I got introduced to a guy in the cannabis industry, and he's like, hey, I like the way you operate. You built this soccer not-for-profit. You got this coach from Europe. You got all these influential families, because we were living in this crazy part on the backside of the Malibu Mountains. And we were going to a school that at the time, this was, 2010s and stuff. I didn't know anything, but, it was a vegan school. It was self-directed education, a huge ecological component. Like on paper, the place was amazing. In actuality, it was batshit crazy, but there was really influential families that went there. Because the school was started by James Cameron's, the director James Cameron's wife and brother-in-law and sister-in-law. And so like unbelievable Malibu families just like came to the school. And so this soccer not-for-profit I had like celebrity royalty, banking royalty, it was crazy. And one of the dads is like, hey man, you get shit done. What are you doing? I went, he says, come to this meeting with me. So he introduces me to the California cannabis industry. And at the time, it was the Wild West. Business was booming, but basically I wasn't a weed smoker. I didn't really know much about weed. I wasn't opposed to it. I just like, weed was never really great for me. I'd get a little in my head and self-conscious. And then I'd eat so much and I would get stoned, like so much. I couldn't control myself. So I didn't really smoke pot very often, but I needed a new business, something to go. So he introduces me, and the bar was so low at the time that basically honest and competent was the new extraordinary. So within 3 years, I went from being like a failed novelist to, a multimillionaire, running a whole bunch of distro vans up and down the state of California, moving 1,500 pounds of cannabis a month easily, sometimes even more, sometimes. So it was great. Things were going great. And then I had bought into, I extended from that into cannabis farming. And that's when I basically lost everything. I got out of my lane. I was doing really well on the distribution side. I had no idea. I was naive, from a business standpoint, I was naive. And I didn't understand the cultures that I was coming into. I didn't understand how hard farming was, the whole idea. I mean, look, when you're buying cannabis at $1,000 a pound and you're selling it for $1,400 a pound, like what can go wrong? Like, why not grow it for $400 a pound and keep selling it for $1,400 a pound? But, the first year we had fires, so we lost everything to smoke damage. Next year we had floods, 11 days of catastrophic rains, 13 inches of rain. We lost every pound of mold. There's no crop insurance. So I was legitimately ruined. But during this time of the cannabis boom, there was a guy who worked for me sometime in the neighborhood. He had a small cannabis grow, and he would also drive one of my distro vans sometimes. Our kids were friends, and there was a sauna in the community that we lived in, and we would meet in the sauna. He's a Eastern European guy, and we'd have these great conversations. And we talk about weed, but I was like, it's really mushrooms. Like I've had these experiences about mushrooms, and he's like, oh, I come from 4 generations of mushroom foragers. So we talked more, and I was so cash positive at the time. I said, hey, if I funded you out, you think we could start to look into the mushroom space, the psychedelic mushroom space? And I didn't want to do anything shroomy or like recreational. I don't have a problem with that at all. I think it's so much better than drinking. I think mushrooms can be used recreationally and socially like that. Not abused, but, once, twice a month, much better than alcohol. But this concept of microdosing was really starting to come up. And I had taken a microdosing product. I didn't really notice it, but I'm like, I just think there's something there. Like, and I was getting late 40s. Like I had so much to accomplish still and so much to do. So basically within 6 months, he was like the best mushroom grower in the United States. The guy's incredible. He's bringing in genetics from Europe. He came from a family of mushroom foragers. They had a cottage where they would go during the summers. They would go mushroom foraging. So for him, it was like really like coming home. And he had a science undergraduate degree. So he just completely took to it. And he became this amazing mushroom grower. And I was really occupied in the cannabis space. So this was like a side project. But we really started to develop different types of mushrooms for the standpoint of microdosing, life optimization, approaching mushrooms as the ultimate form of supplementation, like a biohack with no negative downside, like only an upside. And then we started to experiment with different forms of nootropics. Nootropics are the categories of vitamins that basically deal with neurocognition and brain performance. So we started to play around with all these different formulas. Simultaneously, as the cannabis industry starts to tank, I have the first year of fires, the price is dropping. I lost 50,000 pounds to smoke and fire damage. You got to go all in the next year. Hopefully you can grow yourself out of the problem. And then the prices start to tank, $1,000, $800, $600, $500. By the time we got to the 2021 harvest, it's $400 a pound at the farm and maybe selling for $450, maybe in the cities. So, you're basically, it costs you $400 to grow it, trim it, and pay the taxes on it. Like it's a disaster. No one's making money. Everybody's going.
I'd like to take a moment to talk about my autoimmunity consults, especially for rheumatoid or psoriatic arthritis. If you or anyone you know is suffering from arthritis, I can help. I can give you the knowledge and confidence that took me years and most of my savings to uncover. I've worked successfully with hundreds of clients, and I'm in the unique position that I've been through it myself and come out the other side healed. So I know firsthand what does and doesn't work. If you book a consult or 3-consult deal, you will also get email support, plus my 30-video online course, Autoimmunity, the Subtraction Method, and my Kindle bestseller, Arthritis, the Best Thing That Ever Happened to Me, for free. For more details, how to book, and to read testimonials, go to philescott.com.
I ended up losing everything. I lost everything. And I'll never forget the experience. I'm driving in the 101 freeway up the central coast of California. I was somewhere north of like Pismo Beach kind of area. And I was driving a van full of cannabis that I couldn't afford a security team anymore or detail. The product's like worthless. The prices crashed so bad. And Northern California is losing their mind with COVID craziness. They're just torturing children and bankrupting themselves. And my kids had just gotten thrown out of the school because of a masking incident, which was the dumbest thing in the world. I had sent the family to Texas to get away from California. I'm 265 pounds. I've lost everything. I can't even hustle my way. I can't even go back to distribution to hustle my way out of the problem that we got into farming. I've lost all my money. I've lost investors' money, friends' monies, my driver's money. Like it was so bad. Like I never saw it coming. Like 2 years of force majeure, fires and then floods. So we had just finished off the Brainsupreme Genius formula. We had just kind of perfected it. I had taken 2 weeks off from microdosing and to really cleanse the system. My partner had sent me these and I remembered, I'm like, oh, I have the new Genius formula. So I popped two in my mouth and I literally within 30 minutes, I felt my brain go thunk. Like I felt everything just upgrade. I wasn't shroomy. I wasn't stoned. I just felt my whole biology and neurology upgrade to a higher level of performance. And even though I was like still having night terrors and night sweats and sleeping 3 hours a night, like I suddenly got like creative and optimistic. And I'm like, I can get out of this problem. Like we can fix this. And like the whole world became rosy to me. And I was like, oh wow, this is it. Like this is how I should feel. Like this is how my brain should operate. Like this feels like what you're into with the hardcore carnivore and the paleo. Like basically, you know, I think what I'm going for with the microdosing, I think what you're going for with the carnivore is that we have this inside us, we have this knowingness that God put us here to operate at a higher level. We're meant to operate at a higher level of emotional clarity, um, physical power, physical well-being, mental clarity, spiritual clarity, and we really just are looking to upregulate ourselves to the way that we feel we were always meant to be. That before chemtrails and vaccines and food poisoning and air poisoning and toxic politics and social media. Like when we were walking around the Garden of Eden, we had to feel strong, powerful, connected, loving. And so that's really just what we're trying to get back to. And to a certain degree, like I just felt like that, like, oh, it's there. And I'm like, oh, okay, we're really onto something. So then I was able, and really the evolution of Brainsupreme is the story of my own personal salvation. So I was able to shut things down in California, came to Texas, got Brainsupreme organized, got the brand kind of launched, cleaned up as many messes as I possibly could clean up, and did the best I could to honor all those situations. And essentially recreated life for myself and my family and business here in Texas. And I really don't think I could have done, I mean, I don't know, but certainly Brainsupreme and the development of the Genius formula helped me immeasurably to reorganize my emotions and my psychology and just stay functioning at a high enough level to, undo the shit show and recreate myself.
No, that's a brilliant story. It's a funny thing, like I mentioned in the intro, that I'd never thought of shrooms or acid or anything as anything other than big trips. Never thought
Yeah.
of the microdosing, And I mean, you were kind enough to send me some of the Genius. And I have to say, it's been really, really interesting experimenting with them, because just a little bit that you don't even feel is anywhere near a trip has, like you said, just like lit up my brain.
Yeah.
And it's something I've been looking for, because I think during the COVID years, all that nonsense has really harmed a lot of us, even though I count myself very lucky because my family are all on board. Most of my friends are on board. I do the freedom festivals, with the Daz band. I'm among these awakened people all the time. So I'm very lucky. I'm not one of these people who are isolated, but still, I think in group consciousness, there's been a whole load of damage done. And I think the desire or the increased interest in microdosing recently, because everybody is going like, oh, I'm thinking about microdosing. Oh, I'm thinking,
Yeah, and
didn't
not just microdosing, but also macrodosing and
totally,
journeying and retreats and
totally.
so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't hear this like 5, 6, 7 years ago. I
No.
wasn't hearing it at all. But now I am. And me having the desire to go back to it. I mean, you mentioned something on one of the podcasts that you did a load when you were 19 or so. And it's funny because that was probably 17, 18 was the time that I did it. But I went and holed up in a caravan in Wales next to the best mushroom fields in England. and we just did huge doses.
Over
I mean,
overdid it. Yeah.
overdid it. You know, it was pretty much every day. I mean, I remember one day thinking, right, I won't trip today, and made myself a cup of tea and started tripping. And then I looked in the teapot and there was like, you know, hundreds of mushrooms in there. Somebody had left in there. And those little Liberty caps, I remember one day doing 900. And it was, you know, it was a huge dose. And, you know, 300 was monstrous. And we were just doing this all the time. And I ended up properly psychotic, I'd say,
Yeah.
almost
Yeah.
schizophrenic after, you know, for about 3 years after that. And so I've always been
Wow.
warning and saying to people, no, you know, don't do that. Don't do the shrooms.
Well, don't do what you did. That's for sure.
Exactly, exactly. But what would you,
You
what,
could warn against. You could rightfully warn against that.
I can, yeah. But now it's been weird. I've been really drawn to it. And I've done a few little trips here and there and had some extraordinary experiences, actually. I wrote a book 2004, something like that, Illusion of Maya. It's still out there. And it was about 30% autobiographical when I wrote it. And it's about 90% now. It's funny how we know, you know, what's going to happen somewhere. And remembering the characters in the books. There was one night where my friend Lydia, who I organize festivals with, and she's amazing. I work with her a lot. And so I was supposed to be kind of this rock star, come off stage. And I'm sitting around this fire pit, sort of hugging her and in tears and remembering who Daz was and remembering who other people were. And is it past or parallel lives? Who knows? But remembering that and going back to the book that I'd read and the experience was absolutely beautiful. And I realized I kind of needed to revisit this to lose the fear of it, because I think it actually probably affected like 30 years of my life overdoing it. You know, I didn't get the psychosis, but I was frightened of things. I used to be really nervous on airplanes, which I'm not at all. It would kind of come back. But what would you say to people who have got in that state that I have, and how, because I remember you said even for schizophrenia, microdosing can work somehow. And what happens there? How can you make peace again with the mushroom god?
Well, you offer it respect, and you don't abuse it. And you realize that it's a medicine. Um, it's a information download. It's a tool to kind of open you up, and just treat it respectfully, whether you're doing that in a supported setting or on your own. So look, you need what's happening in the world today is that mushrooms at the macrodosing and microdosing level offer, I think, spiritual sustenance. They give us some fuel, spiritually. And we all need that coming through what we've come through with all these psyops and all this abuse. And, COVID was so bad for the world. It fragmented us, it split us, it bifurcated us in extraordinary and really terrible ways. I personally feel satanic and demonic ways, intentionally. And the way you battle demonic and satanic forces is with love and insight and compassion. And I think mushrooms open that up. And that's why I think there's such a calling for this at the micro and the macro dosing level. And if you have abused mushrooms and had a bad experience and you want to come back to them, one, you could microdose, because microdosing is essentially an expensive supplement that you should notice. Like I use this line a lot in the podcast. I'm a big fitness and workout and supplement guy, like yourself. You don't do supplements anymore. I do. But, I've never gone like, oh my God, that vitamin C. Like I took that vitamin C and but you put a little psilocybin in your vitamin C and you're like, oh my God, like that's right. Like I know what I just spent, 90 pounds on. Like that's the real deal. Like that's so basically, you know, coming back into the mushroom space through microdosing, you'll realize like, oh, I can get these little benefits, these little insights, and it helps demystify and helps forgive it. That's one way. The other way, if you're called to do a journey, is just find a psychedelic therapist or a community that's going to do an experience. I never like to do too big, and you really want to know the person who's the leader of that, who's providing the medicine and holding the space to make sure that you connect with them and it feels right. But you can have some support and you do it the right way. You plan and you prep for it. You are cognizant of what they refer to as set and setting. So the day, the time, the space, the energy, the playlist, you have some reverence about it. And then you allow yourself some integration afterwards. And even if you feel a calling, oh, I got to go back there, you take a month off. You allow yourself to integrate that experience, have somebody that you can talk to about the integration, have some journaling, just deal with it with some reverence. Don't deal with it as like, a bunch of 17, 18, 19-year-old lunatics who are just looking to get as fucking blasted as they possibly can. Like, you're in your 40s now, you're in your 50s, you're in your 60s. Deal with it with a sense of mindfulness and respect, and it's going to reward you. So that's really the way you kind of come back to it. Microdosing or put yourself in a reverent environment around people who have reverence for these plant medicines.
I totally get that. And recently when I've done it, I've sort of had an intention to start with and had some reverence. I've even apologized before I've taken it for the abuse that I gave myself through it, because it was funny, because my first ever trip was a huge one. It was like a proper 18-hour full-on white microdot LSD at 1979 Reading Festival. Thank God it was heaven. It was bliss. It was chaos, but it was amazing. And I remember coming down off that for the first time in my life. I thought, wow, there's a God. And I thought, where did that come from? And I kind of wish I'd left it there and let that restructure itself, instead of going, right, let's all go to Wales and take them as many mushrooms as we possibly can. But that sort of reverence for it is, I think it's really important. And sorry, my kids are making a bit of a racket there.
No worries.
But yeah,
I have kids.
They're great. They pop on the podcast and all sorts. But all I was interested in back then was consciousness and awakening by any means. And I think what got me into it was probably like a lot of people, was the Don Juan books, the Carlos Castaneda books. You read them and you're like, yeah, I want to get into all of that. And then instead of doing that, when I sort of realized that I'd overdone the shrooms, went into the whole TM, transcendental meditation thing. And it was funny, for years I did that, decades perhaps, and got caught up in the whole vegetarian thing, which almost killed me as well, which is often associated with these spiritual movements. But then you mentioned an awakening that you had. And it was about 2005, 2006. And I remember saying, I'm letting go of all of this. I had some kind of like religious guilt that I wasn't going into the dome where they do all the yogic flying and all that kind of thing. And I wasn't interested anymore in my local community, which has a lot of meditators around here. And I said, I'm totally letting go of it. Everything, all the spiritual practices, I had enough. And in that moment, there was everything that I'd ever wanted. It just opened up. And it was funny because I always thought that I'd be some kind of non-dual teacher, not the carnival guy. I never thought I'd be anything like that. And then I ended up on this podcast that I was a big fan of, the Buddha at the Gas Pump, and Rick Archer, and then it came to the 2020, and despite us being friends, and he was one of the ones who swallowed the whole narrative, and then took down JP Sears' interview and mine and everything, saying we're dangerous conspiracy theorists. And it was so strange. But there is something beautiful about one big trip for somebody. I often used to say that I think everybody should do that, because
Oh yeah.
If you shift reality that much, would we have had all those people walking around with muzzles on in the COVID time? Probably not. They'd probably have seen through it.
But you know what though,
But
Phil?
you're
And
right.
like, I think,
People swallowed it still. Even the people from back there swallowed it. The spiritual
I
people
mean,
swallowed it. Everything. What the
the
hell
this
happened?
this the spirit. Look, I think people appreciate this about me, just in terms of like having confidence to order the product because I answer things so easily. Like, if the guys from MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association, whatever psychedelic, whatever that means, if they all got COVID so wrong, if Paul Stamets, like the OG of the mushroom space, is literally going on Joe Rogan, like aligning with Team Fauci and talking about creating extracts of the agarikon mushroom to reduce vaccine hesitancy because you have less vaccine side effects, so people will get more vaccines. Like, and this is the preeminent scholar on psilocybin mushrooms and cubensis. Like, I don't fucking know. Like, I don't know. It makes me happier. It makes me more productive. Most of my people, but like some grand sense of wisdom that the mushroom path is going to open up. Like, I don't know. I don't know. Like, there's plenty of fucking shitheads who have done a lot of mushrooms, you know? But boy, did they get COVID wrong, and boy, did they swallow the propaganda. So I don't have any real answers to that. What I do notice is that now more than ever, people are coming back to them to get some reset in their lives, some redirection, some karmic and cosmic healing and understanding and so forth. So something seems to be calling. But the notion of like a long-term benefit and wisdom to these things, I don't know. I mean, I've seen it both ways. I've seen people who've done a lot of mushrooms and they're just extraordinary, incredible people. And I've seen people who've done a lot of mushrooms and are leaders in the space. And I'm like, I literally can't believe you're saying, espousing, believing, and thinking that. Like, it boggles my mind. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it was the same in the whole spiritual world as well. I mean, the Stamets thing amazed me when I heard that on one of your podcasts because I didn't know. I heard about that. It was like, what the fuck?
What the
But
fuck?
but then but the local school is the Maharishi school, and they're okay, they're cool, but they really swallowed the COVID thing, and it went crazy, and they're pushing veganism,
Crazy.
muzzling the kids, everything. My daughter was there. The arguments I had with them. I mean, I'm really chilled, but once they even called the police on me for mentioning that COVID jabs might be genocide, and they called the police, it was extraordinary. So, the funny thing is that even Maharishi himself said the next world war is going to be against the pharmaceutical companies, and still they've swallowed it. It's so weird.
Well, and also where we are, I mean, I know Rudolf Steiner is international, but my kids. So when COVID hit, I thought I was in LA, but I was traveling back and forth to the farm. So I'm like, let's move closer to the farm. So I moved to a town called Santa Rosa, California, on the border of Sebastopol. So this is Sonoma County in the United States. Sonoma County is the least vaccinated state, the least vaccinated county in the entire United States. And we were living on the border of Santa Rosa, Sebastopol, much closer to Sebastopol. Sebastopol was the least vaccinated town in the United States. And then we were going to the Waldorf of Santa Rosa, which was literally the least vaccinated school in the entire United States. And within 3 months, all these old hippies were double masking, wanted the kids double masked, and wanted all the kids jabbed up. And literally, Rudolf Steiner said, now I'm going to blow the quote a little bit, but Rudolf Steiner says, when he's talking about the Aharamic, which is basically the Satan, he's saying that in the future, the pharmaceutical industry is going to create something, most likely a vaccine, designed to steal the human soul. And 80 years later, you have committed old hippie Steiner Waldorf teachers demanding double masking and vaccination. Like, they lost their fucking minds. Propaganda works. And if you don't think you're susceptible to propaganda, you're highly susceptible to propaganda. Like, it's around us all the time. Psyops and propaganda, they work, they're effective, they shape the collective consciousness in ways that it's almost impossible to perceive until you start perceiving them. And then you're like, holy shit. Try going to a movie these days. Like watching a I love the Premier League. I'm a Tottenham Hotspur. My son's quite a footballer, European footballer, and he's even been to Germany for multiple tryouts and things like this. But like, try watching a fucking Premier League game, taking the knee for all these years for crimes that these kids never committed or had nothing to do with, and then the rainbow flags in the corner of all the different stadiums. That, like, why do we have to have a cheering section delineated by your sexual preferences? Like, what the fuck does that have to do with anything?
Yeah.
Except to propagandize, you know? It's all bullshit. Just let us be human beings. You're a Tottenham supporter or you're a Chelsea supporter. That's the sides, okay?
Exactly.
You don't need these micro factions inside all of it. So it's grooming, it's propaganda, and it's tremendously effective. And each side thinks that they're more they have the insight, So like the thing with the left is that which probably you and I before COVID were probably a little more aligned with. I've been seeing both sides as bullshit for quite a while, but I was definitely more left. And it was much easier to tolerate conspiracy when the conspiracies originating on the right and persecuting the left. If the conspiracy seems to be originating on the left and persecuting the right, the people on the left don't want to look at it at all. It's so tribal. Like,
Yeah.
look, we all have our team. We all have our home team. But then there's truth. And are you going to allow allegiance to your home team to override your ability to be open to and to work at seeing and perceiving what's most truthful?
Oh, yeah.
That's the real problem.
Early on in the COVID thing, there was this great meme with a guy being loaded into the back of an ambulance, and it said, "Man in critical condition because of a slightly differing opinion." And I thought, this is beautiful. It was just all the division was absolutely crazy, wasn't it? It was that was what they want. That's what they feed on. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, look, you look at fortunately, like the United Kingdom right now, from what I'm reading, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, they just keep pushing. They started with COVID and they just push more and more.
Yeah. I was,
30 people a day arrested for what they're posting online and memes. In the United Kingdom, it's 30 arrests a day, I believe.
I know. It's absolutely insanity. Absolutely insane. Yeah. Our guitarist got arrested a little while ago in Epping Forest at some demonstration outside, where they're filling up all these hotels with all these strange, people with no women and children. All these people are fighting AIDS. Like, what's going on there? And
what could go wrong? What could go wrong?
Yeah, he got arrested at that point. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the sort of mega dosing or macro dosing of these hallucinogenics, it is amazing how sometimes it can completely change somebody's life. I'm just going to do a quick story. I don't like going on too much, but this story I think will amuse you. It was one of the best stories of hallucinogenic changing somebody's life. I was traveling around. It was probably 1979. I was traveling around with the free festivals, living in teepees and buses and whatever, and taking loads of trips. And I had a friend from back home in Windsor called Mick Crocker. And he was kind of a biker friend. He was a very cool guy, but he hadn't really got into this side of it. And he said at the end of the season, there was an actual festival called the Psilocybin Festival in Pontrhydy in Wales. And by then it was kind of cold and damp. And he came up on the bike and he said, "I'll come up and check out the festival." So he came up on the bike and he parked it up, and he was kind of nervous. He didn't like this thing. It was all new to him, all these sort of tents and teepees and buses and stuff. And this guy came up and he started caressing his motorbike, and he's saying, "Oh, this is so beautiful." He's going, "Phil, get him off my bike. Get that fucking hippie off my bike." He couldn't, this guy was obviously tripping. And anyway, in the evening, he was pretty unsettled, but he couldn't get away. He had to stay there. So I said, "Tell you what, mate, why not take a trip?" As I remember, it was a brown blotter back in those days. So gave him this trip. And it was so funny. He totally changed. He mapped out the whole of the festival site, which wasn't very big by then. They were little festivals. He had it all split up into sections, and he was called Section Commander Crocker. And he had the inventive sector, and he'd keep everybody in their sectors and keep them all organized. And he was running around. The whole festival site had heard about him because he was so vocal with all of this. There was the inventive sector where they'd learned out how to dry their socks over some twigs, pushed into the ground. There was all this sort of stuff going on, and he was in charge of everything. He'd gone from being freaked out about it to being totally in charge of the whole festival. I lost him at one stage. I was walking down the main street bit, where they had the cafes and the caravans and stuff. I heard this noise. I was tripping as well, and I heard this noise from underneath the caravan. And there was a guy, and he was completely naked. And he was trying to pull himself up off the ground underneath this caravan by the axle or something to try and get off the ground. I was staring at him. And I thought, what on earth is he doing? And I was watching him for a while. All of a sudden, Crocker appeared, bent down next to me, totally straight-faced, looked at this guy for a couple of seconds and went, "Oi, you are out of your fucking sector." It was so funny. It was one of the most amazing scenes ever. Hilarious. But in the morning, he came down and he was kind of embarrassed because everyone was going, "Morning, Section Commander Crocker, morning." But that changed his life in a way that he stayed in Wales. He got some land and lived there for a while, had some kids. Now he's in Portugal with some beautiful land, totally self-sufficient. And that night, his life pivoted totally on a dime.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I've heard many stories like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they're amazing, aren't they? So what do you think about the difference between the hallucinogenic effect of various things, like the difference between acid and psilocybin? Run us through
good.
that.
Okay. Yeah. I've given some real thought to this. Okay, so I believe that mushrooms work on what I call the vertical axis. Okay, so it's the Akashic records, the geomorphic energy of the earth, compressed into this fungus. You ingest the fungus, you connect with the wisdom of the earth, and then it opens you to the divinity of the heavens. And so it becomes an informational portal from the divine through you to the earth, all about unclogging your psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, to purify your connection between the heavens and the earth, so that you, as a human being, can live the most successful, prosperous, harmonious, joyful, meaningful, connected life experience on this earth plane as possible, as a conduit of the energy between the divine and the earth. So mushrooms love you. It might have a rough journey, but they love you. They want the best for you, and they're using you as much as we're using them, because they want the earth plane to be as prosperous and sustainable as possible, because then mushrooms can do their thing. And who knows, we don't even really understand what their thing is, but they need this earth plane to be in relatively good shape so they can grow and prosper. So mushrooms work on what I call the vertical spiritual axis, the earth through you to the heavens, and then it's this kind of fluid relationship, all about just getting your neuroanatomy, your biology, your psychology, your spirituality all lined up so that you can live a healthier, happier, more connected and joyful life experience. The other psychedelics like LSD, DMT, they work on a horizontal axis, much more so. So shit's coming in from parallel lives and universes and different timelines and entities and beings. Some may be good, some may be not so good, but it's a different experience. You're still going to get some of that connection between the earth and the divine. But, these are often synthetic compounds, isolations and so forth, and they work on much more of what I call the horizontal plane. And for that plane, you need to be more versed in what you might connect with and what you could potentially be inviting in. And you have to develop some language and some understanding on even how to contend and deal with that. What do you have to teach me? Because entities, whether they are beneficial or demonic, they can abuse free will. There's something about free will that God instilled in us that we have to relinquish our free will, and then something will come into us. So if you're ever approached by an entity or something doesn't feel right, you can just simply say, what do you have to teach me? And if you're not interested in that, or if you sense a darkness, you just, I'm not interested, please leave. Or I just say, I stay with God, I reject you outright. And they kind of sizzle and they go away. But mushrooms, for me, it's the best, and it's the best place to start because you're working on this divine vertical axis. The horizontal axis is a little freakier, a little more dangerous. Very beneficial. You can learn a lot, but it's more shit can happen, you know? You open yourself up energetically and psychically in both positive and potentially negative ways, more so than I think you do with mushrooms.
That's a really interesting take on it, man. Really, really. I've not thought about it in that way. That's really cool. Yeah, on the entity thing, I think this is really interesting. What do you think about these entities? Are they sort of aspects of ourself? Are they sort of egregores? Are they actual beings that are coming in from other dimensions that you might have some danger of becoming attached to? What do you think? What's your take on these entities, or a mixture of the two?
Well, I think the reporting is too consistent into what shapes beings experiences that people are having. There are too many people who are recording having similar entities, similar experiences for it to be purely psychosomatic, individually psychosomatic. This has got to be part of the collective unconscious that we all share, or there needs to be a legitimacy to these parallel timelines, parallel dimensions, or fluidity between dimensions that we just can't rightly perceive. Because too many people have the same experience. They experience and see the same thing. Are you familiar with Danny Goler and the DMT laser experiment? You know anything about this?
Yes, I heard it on
Oh,
one of yours.
okay.
And or
Oh,
did
okay,
I?
cool. I'll just,
I heard it actually on another one this morning on Forbidden Knowledge News. But yeah,
oh,
go for it.
interesting.
Yeah, it's cool.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, I'll just recap it real quickly for your audience. So this guy named Danny Goler comes from a musical, artistic, scientific family background. I think he's a composer, sound designer himself, very creative, very talented, smart guy. Has used DMT creatively for quite a while. And he uses it so frequently, and he uses it so mindfully that he starts to have different entities that he's communicating with and getting information from. And he starts to see this number 46 in his DMT trips, and consistently number 46. And one day he walks out of his apartment, and right there on the ground in front of him in Miami is the number 46. And evidently there was some land surveying crews. And so there was a 46 with an arrow. So he follows the number 46 with this arrow for like 7 miles all through Miami. And it ends up in a ground surveying laser. And he's like, the DMT must want me to bring a laser into my next session. So he gets a laser, projects a laser X on the wall. He's not looking in the laser. He's looking at the projected laser. So don't anybody shine a laser in their own face, okay? He projects the laser onto the wall. He does his DMT. And within the 1-inch spacing of the laser X, he starts to see code, Sanskrit, hieroglyphics, mathematic, stationary code. And as he'd walk in, the code would just extend up. Like there's a wall of code. And, you know, he's in the creative spaces. So he calls a documentary film, make a friend of his. He's like, look, we got to see if we can repeat this. So he does it again. It repeats. And the guy's like, okay, this is a movie. So they've repeated this experiment with the DMT laser now like 1,000 times, over 1,000 times. People are doing it themselves, and everybody's perceiving the same thing. I have friends that have done it as well. Chase Hughes, who was a brain specialist, PSYOP specialist, he brought the guy to his compound in Virginia, brought Danny Goler, and they repeated it. So there's too much of a shared experience in the psychedelic space for it to be just individual psychology. Your individual psychology is the issues and things that are getting worked out. But the entities, beings, and some of these messages, universal messages, too many people are receiving them with complete uniformity and consistency. So it's got to be real, you know? And so I think when it comes to the kind of parallel horizontal psychedelic spaces, there is definitely something real, and the entities, the messages, the timelines, all of it. So because it's been, you know, if something in science can be repeated, you know, if it's repeatable, then it becomes something of like scientific fact, or more than theory, I'd say. So yeah, there's definitely something going on, something real to it.
I love the sort of collective consciousness of tripping. I think it's a way of showing people how we are connected and that consciousness doesn't stop, right
Yeah.
where our
Yeah.
body stops. There was I remember that trip that I mentioned in 1979 at Reading Festival, and we'd taken this acid. None of us really knew what to expect. I think one of us did. And we were wondering about, how it is, where you're sort of expecting some actual predictable effect. And I remember there was some Hell's Angels that we knew, and they were in the next field, and they had a big tent, and we thought, oh, we'll go say hello to them. And we went and sat down. They gave us some cigars, and we're sitting there smoking cigars, going, I wonder what this LSD is all about. And then all of a sudden, one of the guys walked into the tent. He kicked over this can of petrol, and there was petrol everywhere. It smelled like crazy. There was about four of us, I think, four, maybe five. And we all jumped up and ran out because we thought, God, we got cigars and everything. We ran out of the tent. And the guy came out, one of the Hells Angels came out, and he said, what are you doing? He said, well, there's petrol all over the place. He goes, the can was empty and the lid was on. And it was funny. It was just immediately the first thing of not even knowing about tripping. And there was that collective sort of shared experience. And we're going, oh, okay, something funny's happening here. It was very interesting. But so what do you think about the differences? I'd love to get into the Brainsupreme stuff now, because
Yeah.
you've got the different products, and I absolutely love it on the site where you've got the on the back of the black stack, for example, and you've got the runway and then lift off and then airborne, and the way that you
Right.
phrase these things, I think it's great. But what are the difference between the products and how should they be used? Run us through those, because I think it's fascinating
cool.
what you put together there.
Good. All right. So just so your audience knows, with Brainsupreme, we leave for obvious reasons, we leave the secret ingredient off the packaging. We say Brainsupreme proprietary mushroom blend, but trust me, the secret ingredient is what's really in there. So in terms of like travel and shipping and running the website, like you're totally fine. We send product everywhere and it gets everywhere, and everybody understands the little, secret agreement kind of that we all have. And my customer base has been absolutely extraordinary with that. So trust that it's in there. We wouldn't be having this conversation if it wasn't really in there. Okay, so we have 4 lines that we launched with. We have Genius, which is our flagship and original formula. And so psilocybin, magic mushrooms in and of themselves are like the best nootropics in the world. And as I said, nootropics are the categories of vitamins and supplements that are for neurocognition and brain performance and so forth. Caffeine to a certain degree is a nootropic. Green tea is a nootropic. L-theanine, alpha GPC, certain amino acids, they fuel and facilitate neurocognition and your brain function. So all our products are highly nootropic because psilocybin is the absolute best nootropic. But our most nootropic formulation is Genius. That's where we take 100 milligrams of our secret ingredient and we blend it with 400 milligrams of complementary nootropics. So neurocognition, brain performance, emotional well-being helps with all that. Okay, but that's our head formula, you could say. And then we have Feel Good, and Feel Good is our heart formula. So we take 100 milligrams of secret ingredient and we blend it with 400 milligrams of adaptogenic herbs that are good for mood, energy, libido, self-worth. It's more of our heart emotional formula. That's called Feel Good. And then we have Athlete, which is our performance formula. That's 100 milligrams blended with natural testosterone boosters, cardiovascular support, recovery support. So that's our performance and athletic formulation. And then we have Black Stack, which is the one you're talking about with the airplanes on the back. And Black Stack is our extra strength formula. That's 300 milligrams of secret ingredient blended with nanocurcumin, vitamin C, and ginger. If people need a slightly higher microdose, because microdosing is entirely neurologically subjective. You could have a 110-pound woman who needs a 400 milligram microdose, and you can have a 300-pound guy who one capsule of 100 milligrams of active ingredient is perfect for them. You're never going to know until you begin the process of microdosing and you figure out what your own kind of neurological needs are, and they're not based on body weight. So the best way to understand microdosing is also within the context of the macrodose, like we've been talking about. So traditionally, back in 1979, when you were going into fields of mushrooms, you were probably eating at least 5 grams of mushrooms. And 5 grams of mushrooms, or 5,000 milligrams, that's the historic demarcation point for real journeying space. Like you're going to enter the psychedelic realm. Okay. Microdosing happens at the sub 10% level of that. So microdosing for most people is somewhere between 100 to 400 milligrams. And then that's the realm. So what's happening with microdosing is it should be perceptible in terms of 5, 10, 15, 20% overall increase in your neurocognition, your functioning, your emotional well-being, non-reactiveness, the default mode network, the voice, the silly little voice in your head that's always yammering about you, not being good enough, or shame, guilt, regret, that gets quieter. But for the vast majority of our customers, um, there's a perceptible level of benefit. So what you're doing with microdosing is you just start very slow. We have what we call the supplement protocol: 5 days on, 2 days off, best in the morning, best on an empty stomach, best with a glass of lemon water. By the way, all this information is available on the website and on the different podcasting channels. We have a free coaching course. So if you miss it, you can watch this again, or you can get it, through other sources. So what you want to do is you just want to scale your dosage up on the supplement protocol till you hit your sweet spot, which we define as perceptible, non-intoxicating, non-hallucinatory. Some perceptible level of benefit, but you're still totally under control. Like all the mundane things you do in your life, you should feel you can accomplish them with even more ease and grace and enjoyment and level of curiosity and so forth. It's that uptick that we talked about. And you just keep scaling upwards. So if you're going to start with the supplement protocol, days 1 and 2, just take 1 capsule, see how you feel. Hey, if 1 capsule does it, great. It's going to last longer. It is a little expensive. You're going to get more life out of it. And then you just keep scaling up. You scale, maybe on day 3, you scale to 2 capsules. Okay. Kind of felt that. Think I had a really good day. On day 4, you go to 3 capsules. Like, oh, that's too much. Like I was a little, like, I just noticed it too much. Okay. You found your sweet spot of 2 capsules. And then so our coaching protocol basically goes with demystify. So if you have stigma surrounding that, if you're very concerned, first thing you have to do is you have to demystify it. Break open a capsule, just do half. You're not going to trip balls. You're going to be fine. You probably won't even notice it. Just do it on a weekend for the first time. You've got a Saturday morning. You can completely relax. You don't have any other concerns. Just do what you need to do to demystify the process so you release any negative stigma or associations, concerns that you might have. And then you can get into the familiarization standpoint, where you go through the supplement protocol for at least your first 2 weeks and just familiarize yourself. You're like, you know what? I think 2 capsules is my sweet spot. But because you acclimate over the course of the week, I'm going to do days 1 and 2 on 1 capsule and days 3, 4, and 5 on 2 capsules. And then I'll take 2 days off. So you figure that out, or that the product works for you. And like, I like to stack 1 Genius and 1 Feel Good. Or you're a big workout person, you want to stack Genius and Athlete. But the whole first month should really be about familiarizing yourself on how to work with this, medicine, with this supplement, and once you've done that, then you can go into the realm of personalization. We have other protocols. We have something called performance protocol, which I'm a big fan of. Performance protocol is I stack Genius and Athlete, and I do it on my 3 hardest workout days, an hour before the workout, and my workouts tend to be flow state. So I'll take, so my 3 hardest training days are Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So on Monday, I'll take 2 Genius, 1 Athlete, an hour before my workout. On Wednesday, I'll take 2 Genius, 2 Athletes. On Friday, 2 Genius, 2 Athletes. And then I take the weekend off. So I feel a real benefit to the microdose during my workout. Like my workouts are flow state. And then the benefits of the microdose linger throughout the day and the next day, and then I do it again. So this is performance dosing is an every other day protocol, or a 1 day on, 2 days off, or like Wednesday practice, Saturday game day. Got a number of professional athletes, mixed martial artists, and so forth, who really love the performance dosing because it's a noticeable uptick in their performance and neurocognition and kind of flow state. They almost feel predictive. One of the fastest growing sectors of Brainsupreme is middle-aged pickleball players. Do you guys have pickleball in the UK?
maybe, but it's not like it is in the States, but I know what it is.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. So pickleball is usually a four-person. It's on a truncated tennis court. It's played with a larger ball and these kind of wood-ish rackets. And it's something you can do into your middle age. It's very fast, very competitive, and people love it because they can seemingly have, like maintaining a tennis rally is very hard, even at very high level of tennis. Maintaining a pickleball rally is so much easier. So people scale in their ability to improve it very quickly. It's very satisfying. But literally, it's like my fastest growing segment. I've got all these 50-year-olds in Austin, Texas, who are like, that ball seems so huge and everything slows down. And my performance, my reaction time, my enjoyment. So then there's performance dosing. And the final way to really approach microdosing is what I call peak day dosing. So you're familiar with it. You understand how to work with these products. And you're like, look, I love it. But I'm just going to keep it for once a week. Friday, I've got a big workout and then we have a meeting at work and I really want to be on point. So I'm just going to do my microdosing on Friday. You can be very kind of selective and just do peak day dosing along those lines. So those are the four formulas and our three different protocols on how to approach microdosing.
That's cool. I mean, everybody knows me really who knows me for the carnivore world and knows me that for not being at all into any sort of supplements. I got into this cerule thing a little bit that increases stem cells, but a lot of people approach me and say, hey, would you like to market this? Would you like to market that? And I take them and I try them and I go, not really. And they don't really do anything. And like you said, this is something that really you do notice. You really do
Yeah.
notice that something's going on. And so people will be surprised that I'm into this. But I've been messing about with this for a month or so on and off and trying different dosage. And, something I said earlier on about the damage that that the COVID years have done. And I think it's really taken a lot of my creativity. The carnivore is
Mm.
brilliant. It takes down inflammation. It reverses pretty much everything in the book. But I find myself wondering, how did I ever write a book? How did I
Mm.
ever do this? How did I ever do that? And the days where I've taken just the right dose of the genius, it's been amazing. I've got
Mm.
on the drums here behind me that you can't kind of see, just the practice kit, and play stuff. And I think, how did I do that? This is real creativity coming out. It really
Yeah.
is quite astonishing. And that is at a level where if you were sort of sitting there, you wouldn't particularly notice anything except for a little bit more clarity. That kind of nice feeling when you're just coming up on a trip where you think you can see a beetle on a tree at 500 yards away, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
that clarity that's coming in. But honestly, I think it's amazing. And I think it would be so useful on so many levels for people at the moment.
So we do very well in the UK. I have to say we have a lot of it's our Australia and the UK are the switch is monthly, but our second and third leading point of sales. We're very close to having distribution happen out of the Netherlands, which is going to drop our. So basically, look, in terms of the microdosing space, like Brainsupreme, I feel we make the best supplements. So just for your audience to understand, like some of the numbers here. So in the supplement space, if you're an online supplement, if you can be somewhere between 1% to 2% of people who visit your site purchase, that's the norm. Okay. We move between 6 to 10% of people who visit our website and purchase is 6 to 10%. So we're in the very highest. And then here's the thing that's very satisfying as a business founder. We have a 66% conversion rate from one-time buyer to subscriber. So that means 66% of people who try Brainsupreme once go on to end up subscribing for 6 months or a year or longer. In terms of Shopify, that's 0.4 out of all 4 million Shopify websites. I think we're in the 0.4%, top highest percent in terms of conversions and repeat customers and so forth. So our business has grown by 263% in this last year. So we're making a product that is affecting people in a really beneficial way, and that does feel wonderful. And so the one thing with Europe, though, with the taxes and tariffs, and we only ship with FedEx because everything always gets there with FedEx. So the international shipping is expensive. So what I always tell people international is, look, bite the bullet one time, just order one pack, make sure it works for you, make sure it connects, and then you can order less frequently. but order in a little higher volume, or get your friends to order together, because whether we're sending 1 packet or 10 packets, it's essentially the same cost with the shipping. Because the way we have our product packaged and manufactured, we're not in jars, we're in these kind of packets. So, but we should have European distribution set up within the next month. So that's going to bring our European costs down a lot, which I'm very excited, because I think it's going to be like a standard $15 international or shipping from there. So that'll be great and help us reach more people in the UK. We'll also do a nice discount code for all your listeners. They can just type in Phil and they'll get a 15% discount code.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, some people, the different dosage required for people is kind of interesting, isn't it? You know, because it, like you say, it doesn't go with a sort of body weight or anything like that. Now, something I wanted to ask you about was sort of resistance to it, because I don't know whether it's the same kind of thing as with cannabis, but that Rick Simpson oil, I had some of that to help my mum with her breast cancer. It kind of worked, but you know, she was so mashed all the time that I went another route. You know, we went carnivory and an iodine protocol, and you can see her breast cancer completely reversing on my YouTube channel. But anyway, I had a load of this Rick Simpson oil left, and I wasn't really, I've not really been that much into cannabis at all over the past few years, but I was just taking a little tiny bit in the morning, and it was kind of nice. But then my partner, who hasn't, you know, in the 20 years we've been together, I haven't even seen her take a sip of alcohol, nothing, no cigarettes, no drugs, no nothing whatsoever, just meditation, just, you know, she's just herself. And then she said, actually, I'd like to try that Rick Simpson oil. So I thought, okay, well, I'll just start her off with a little bit, and just a little blob of it, you know. And she was actually doing some ironing, sitting there in front of a TV program or something, doing some ironing. Anything happened? Nothing. No. Honestly, I kept giving her doses of this stuff, and eventually gave her enough that would have probably put me in a mental institution. And there was nothing
Wow.
whatsoever happened. And I've heard about this since, that there are some people who are totally resistant to it. Does this happen with psilocybin? I mean, if she wanted to try something like that and that happens, I heard you say that some people who are resistant, maybe they need a bigger dose to kind of kick them off, and then they can go into the microdosing or something. What happens with
Yeah,
resistance to these things?
I'll talk about that. So your wife probably has just her endocannabinoid system is just wired a little differently. So with cannabis, you have a series of receptors throughout your body called the endocannabinoid system, and the cannabinoids in THC, CBD, CBG, CBV, they lock onto these receptors, and everybody has this kind of individuated form of receptors. There are people who just have less receptive receptors. Now, psilocybin is something similar, I would say. Now, if you've been on an antidepressant like an SSRI or SNRI, Wellbutrin or something along those lines, you eat psilocybin, it hits your liver, it converts to psilocin, and then you have psilocin receptors in your brain that basically latch on to the psilocin, and that's what gives you the psychedelic experience. You know, very, very mild in terms of just an uptick in performance, or if you have enough of it, floods your receptors, and you start tripping and you start really going places. So if you've been on an antidepressant, an SSRI, there's about a 50% chance that those receptors in your brain are going to be blocked to a high degree or a certain degree. Now, you can still stay with microdosing because there's other benefits, anti-inflammatory benefits, and you can start to scale down your SSRI. And we've had a number of Brainsupreme customers who responsibly, with usually a naturopathic doctor, a natural doctor working with them, have been able to scale off their antidepressants and replace it with microdosing. Adderall is amazing. 3 days on Brainsupreme, people stop taking Adderall. People have been taking Adderall for 20, 25 years, they stop. And then in terms of natural, and then there's also digestion. And what's interesting is that the purer your system operates, usually the less psilocybin you need. So probably a guy like yourself, like 1 to 2 capsules probably does the trick, right? For a microdose?
Oh, easily 2 seems to be perfect for a microdose. I mean,
Yeah, 2.
even at 4, I can sort of feel that kind of trippy thing starting on only 4.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because your system, your brain and your biology are really clean and clear. You've done the, carnivore, and the quality of food and water that you put in your body has been so pure, and lack of pharmaceuticals. So sometimes less is more. most people microdose around 2 capsules or 200 milligrams. Some people a little more, some people a little less. Now, if you start microdosing and you're not on an antidepressant and you have good digestion, as in you haven't done a load of antibiotics and have real compromised gut health, because you do digest them. So if you have compromised digestion, you're going to have compromised reabsorption. But if we rule out the heavy antibiotic users with real compromised gut biomes, and we rule out the antidepressant users, there's about like a 1 to 1.5% of people out there, more often than not, redheads, which I've just found wild in my personal coaching experience here. And I've had over 3,000 of these conversations on how to, there's like, I always tell people, my standard lines, there's so many better people in the mushroom space in terms of mushroom knowledge. There's so many better people in terms of brain health, brain knowledge, neuroanatomy. But I probably have had, humbly, more one-on-one conversations about how to microdose because I've been developing this brand for 7 years than anybody in the world. So I've had over 3,000 conversations with customers and clients on how to microdose. And, for the first 5 years, I was just giving them out and hand selling them and so forth. So I'd always check back in and get feedback. So I do have a wealth of experience when it comes to kind of solving these problems. And in about 1.5% of non-antidepressant users, people with decent digestion, there can be some psilocybin resistance. And I have found that if your receptors have just dulled for some reason, the psilocybin receptors in your brain, they don't even know they're there. And the microdose isn't enough for them to latch on to with any perceptible benefit that would make taking a product like this at $90 worthwhile. So if you can take a recreational dose of 1 to 1.5 grams, and usually in like the form of a recreational chocolate or just pure mushroom, because there's a lot of other ingredients in Brainsupreme. But if you could take a 1 to 1.5 gram dose, if that hits you, that will turn the receptors on, and then you can actually go back and microdose. And we've done this with tremendous success, where I've had clients like, hey, I don't know if it's working. And then we scale up and they're 400 or 500 milligrams or 4 or 5 capsules, still nothing. I'm like, okay, we go a second route. They find a truffle somewhere, or I don't know, somehow that works out. And they do a 1.5 gram dose. I'm like, oh yeah, I felt that. That was really great. That was delightful. I'm like, okay, take 3 days off and then try microdosing again. And then they can go back 2-3 capsules or 200 or 300 milligram traditional microdosing range. They're fine. They can microdose again. Those receptors get turned on. And we've had literally I think I've had 2 exceptions out of 12,000 sales where somebody just even after I'm working with them, they're not on an antidepressant, they're not on SSRI, pretty good digestion, it just doesn't work for them, And at that point, to go to 4 or 5 grams, that's something that they have to then try to do on their own. That's not my space, and so forth. So, but with this kind of recreational dose, it can turn the receptors on. And now the only other semi-consistent interactions or counterindication is, so psilocybin is basically, it's a canary in a coal mine for your biology and your neurology. It will literally point out where you have problems. Okay. And the only 2 side effects that we ever really get with Brainsupreme is, and I'm talking 1 out of 100, less than 1%, is headaches and sleepiness. And those are both signs of dehydration, that your brain is dehydrated. Because when you're taking psilocybin, it's creating new neural pathways. There's a couple things that are happening. You're having neurogenesis, where new neural pathways, neuroplasticity is being fired, so new pathways are being formed. You're having neurogenesis, where old pathways are being regenerated, and damaged pathways from brain traumas, injuries, and so forth, they're being revivified. So they're getting fired. And then you're also having this interesting thing that this is not the right term for. I'm still trying to find a term. And this is just my theory. It's neurodegenesis, where basically negative pathways are being unwound, okay, so that new ones can be wound. Because the basic science of psilocybin boils down to this, is that psilocybin moves your brain in a beneficial direction, whether you're cognizant of it or not. And if you're cognizant of it, it'll move your brain in a beneficial direction even more quickly. So if you have goals and intentions and things you're going for, it can really help put the wind in your sails. And that's basically psilocybin. By some miracle, these mushrooms want you to be healthier and happier, and they move your brain wiring in that direction. Now, the increased firing and new and different firing of your brain in some people can cause people to get sleepy. Other people can get a very mild headache. Now, I'm batting 1,000% with this. If there's any sleepiness or if there's ever any headaches, you got to add some high quality electrolytes to your water. It's a sign of brain dehydration. Your brain needs more. It needs a little more fluid and more H2O and more minerals and salt to function on. So add some high quality salt to your diet or put a pinch under your tongue. I'm personally, Celtic salt in Europe is amazing. I'm personally using a lot of Baja Gold, which is a salt, a very, very pure, wonderful salt that's available on Amazon and all kinds of websites from the Baja Peninsula. Put a pinch under your tongue, drink more water, add some sports electrolytes, quality sports electrolytes to your drinking water during the day, and then take a high quality magnesium supplement. I'm personally using right now a product called Bio Optimizers, Magnesium Breakthrough. I have no affiliation. It has 7 different forms of magnesium. Take 1 or 2 in the morning, take 1 or 2 before bed, and 1,000%, the headaches go away, the sleepiness goes away, and then the full benefits of the microdosing start to come in. The only other thing that happens 1 of 1,000 times is people start to get sad for the first couple of days. And that's because some shit's getting unwired in your brain that's been in there, some operating systems that are been keeping you down, even below the perceptible level, start to get unwind and old emotions start to come up. But I would just tell you, lean into that. Just write about it, journal about it, meditate on it, ask for forgiveness there, for clarity there. Like the mushrooms are doing some magic right there. They're getting your neuroanatomy kind of lined up and they're getting the static off the line. They're unclogging some of the lines. And that's really it. Like when there's, I do offer a coaching service. I mean, I sell a product. And the nice thing about selling a product is that I'll give away the knowledge and information for free because just buy Brainsupreme, or don't buy Brainsupreme. But at least like I've got the end goal. Like I don't have to be, I'm not selling a service. And the people in the mushroom space who are often selling a service, they'll make a very big deal about microdosing because they feel you need the coaching and you need their service and so forth. But literally, it's not that big a deal. It's a slightly expensive supplement that you should notice and watch the coaching course, listen to a couple podcasts. Like you'll figure out how to do it. Like it's not a big deal. Don't be an idiot. Don't take 10 of them the first time they come in. Don't abuse the product. Follow the instructions. Go at this with some reverence and some mindfulness and some intention. Scale your dosage up, find your sweet spot, and you're good to go. If you're one of the outliers that has a sticking point, you can contact me through the website. I get in touch back with everybody. If I don't get back to you within 24 hours, it's because it went to spam and write me again. Like I'm like human AI. I know all this stuff. I just go right to voice to text. Sometimes there's some malapropisms and some punctuation, but I get back to everybody and we rectify all these kind of situations. Like the products like work, I'm a big believer in the things we've done. Like they work and they're effective.
It's funny you mentioned that sadness thing because I've been enjoying it for, the whole time I've been experimenting, but I had like 4 left and I thought, right, I didn't have much to do that day. And so I took the 4 and went out for a walk with my son, who you met just before this, in the woods.
Yes.
And it was funny. I sat down by this beautiful stream there in the woods, and I had this absolute all-pervading sadness. It was very gentle, and it was really nice. It's kind of like when you're a kid and you cry and the stress comes out. You kind of enjoy crying. It's a good thing. Yeah. But I sat there and I thought, I didn't expect this at all. But I sat there and then it was showing me. It's funny how it gives you what you need, never quite what you expect, eh? And it was just showing me that just how exhausted I am. And I really am. I don't know if I'd even still be alive if I was still eating vegetables and the sort of thing that I was doing. But just the past few years have been really a hard time for us. And also add that to the whole COVID thing. And sometimes I'm kind of in denial of that and I just get on with it. And it was almost like saying, no, you really need to sleep more. You need to chill more and you need to. And that was the message I was getting. And it was absolutely fine with me, but people have got to realize that there isn't a specific effect, is there, from psilocybin. It gives you kind of different things depending on what you need at the time. And that's what I think is so fascinating, what you say and what I think is true about mushroom sentience and how it seems to be sort of, you were almost saying at one point that you had a batch of shrooms, and then another shroom kind of grew, this weird purple
Oh
one,
yeah,
and
that's
it
the
was
story.
almost like what you need, what it was looking for, what you needed, because it
Yeah,
was tapping into what
yeah,
you needed. That was fascinating. Yeah, what happened there?
yeah. Our packaging still says Brainsupreme proprietary mushroom blend. Like that's the secret handshake kind of thing. And we used to grow four different strains of mushrooms. Um, albino penis envy, Texas teachers, Amazonias, and hillbillies. And so, but we had this incredible mutation where all the qualities that we were going for and what we wanted in a microdosing product, which you need the mind, you need the body, the heart, the energy. Like we want the full spectrum of effects that you can get, not too heavily psychedelic, not too, heavily body oriented, like the perfect balance. Like we just had a specimen show up that seemed to amalgamate all these different qualities that looked different. It was beautiful. It was proportioned in this extraordinary way. And we were able to isolate, my partner's the mushroom genius, but we were able to spore that, isolate it, and then propagate it. So we actually have our own, it's a bit verbose to say proprietary, strain, but we did manage to create this. We had this glorious mutation. We were able to propagate it. So now we call it our, proprietary mushroom. It looks a little different and seems to work a little different and it works perfectly for what our needs are as a microdosing product. And so, yeah, the mushrooms and the love and the energy. So, you know, giving a shit is really a great competitive advantage. Just like I'm still a linebacker. Like I'm cool. I'm a mushroom guy. I want a healthy, harmonious planet. I want to be left alone. I want to leave you alone. My whole thing is reclaim my sovereignty, raise my frequency. That's what I live by. My sovereignty is my connection with the divine, and my frequency is my energy and my love, and how much of that I can just effortlessly, energetically kind of be radiating to raise my frequency. So that's my thing. Like I know what I'm doing. I'm still competitive. Like I want to make the best microdosing supplement out of there. And the more you give a shit, the more of a competitive advantage that you have. So like our grow space, we have air purification systems. We have something out of Egypt called biogeometry, where the way that the water flows and the piping, and you can kind of correct with these mathematical equations that you like Sanskrit mathematical equations that you tape on to your different piping. Like we do everything we can to provide the mushrooms the most enjoyable or harmonious growth space they can possibly have. And and then I have this thing. I had a mystical experience with an Indian guru in 1999. Ever since then, I wake up at 4 a.m., especially after the stresses and the business losses. I always wake up at 4 a.m., so 3:30, 4 a.m. So I just jump up, I meditate, I pray for about an hour. And so like I even use my meditation, my prayer, like I'm sending the love, towards the mushroom grow, and that they're healing, they're helping, they're uplifting, they're a benefit to every customer and client who takes them. I send my love through our email list, that it's like every customer, every client, everybody who's experimenting, trying Brainsupreme, that it's a benefit to them, it's helping them, it's uplifting them. So like the more you can love, the more you have generosity of spirit, it's a competitive advantage. And then the mushrooms, I think, read that, and they gave us this mutation, and they gifted us with the perfect mushroom that we were able to propagate. And that's kind of what we grow and what we use for our product line now.
Wow, that's such a beautiful attitude. That's that's so cool. And I think that with an attitude like that, and with the sort of collective consciousness waking up to wanting to experiment with psilocybin again, I think I think that's going to be great. And I'm not surprised that this new strain popped up. So I'm wondering, because I wonder if things are sort of more on a global level now, which is obvious as a bit of an insult with what's going on. But as far as sort of global consciousness goes, rather than the horrible globalists. But if you now, perhaps there might be something that's required for the collective consciousness, if you like, some new strain of psilocybin, because I think a lot of times people think that it should be local, whether you're eating, if you still eat plants, they should be local plants. If you eat animals, they should be local animals. Is it the same that if you're picking mushrooms and taking mushrooms, I should be taking the Liberty cap straight out of the ground? Or is this Brainsupreme stuff, which, I'm playing devil's advocate here really, because it feels absolutely fine to me and it's given me a load of benefits. already in the first month or so. But what do you think about local strains of mushrooms as opposed to ones that come from different countries for different people in different areas? Does that make sense?
Totally, 100%. And I think there's some truth to it, um, from the gourmet and functional mushroom standpoint. Certainly there's going to be microbes and almost even frequency. If you're going to the highest level German new medicine and some of the thought about, all disease is frequency, and even there's parasitic and demonic frequency that we're battling in terms of spiritual warfare. So there's a frequency that your local food is going to pick up that should be beneficial to you and harmonize you with your environment. Um, and then even in terms of the psychedelic space, look, if you order a pack of Brainsupreme and you're like, that's good stuff, I like it. But then you find a local mushroom growing and it does the same thing for you. I don't know, maybe, okay, you save some money, it's local. Like, I think it's got to be, it's got to be comparative. I would probably answer that though, in terms of the psychedelic space and in terms of like the supplement space, I think it's the energetic of the company and the quality of the ingredients, and it can be international. It can come from really anywhere if the energy's there, because these are you're dealing at like the kind of molecular level. That it's the these are organized plants and funguses and adaptogenic compounds and amino acids that have been very organized in a specific way for human biology and human neurology. And that's either going to connect with you or not connect with you. I don't think that's going to matter so much about where you are in terms of the planet. But in terms of like local immune system, in terms of gourmet mushrooms and functional mushrooms, certainly there are going to be benefits of getting them locally, um, that might outweigh even getting them internationally or on foreign trade.
Such honesty as usual, Adam. Brilliant. Listen,
Yeah.
we're on about an hour and a half at the moment, and that I think is quite a good place to stop, because I'd kind of rather not, because I've got a load more questions going down some really bizarre avenues, but maybe we can do a part two and do some really crazy
Yeah.
stuff. Because
Yeah. Let's sell some product before we piss everybody off.
I love it. I
About
love
the
it.
urine therapy in the shape of the earth and globe skepticism, and then be like, but
Exactly.
oh, this guy's a real wackadoodle. So
And the
I
AI,
am,
and I
but
was
I'm also, oh
yeah, no, you're great. And also I wanted to get into some stuff about the AI and pick your brains about ether, because I heard you were talking to ether a while ago. But let's not go down
yeah,
that rabbit hole this time. That's a teaser for next time, because honestly,
yeah,
we could
let's
go
save it.
into some crazy stuff.
Let's say,
But
hey, I want to throw you. I meant
yeah,
to kind of work this in earlier, but I definitely want to throw you some props. So, my um 24 days ago, my mom died. And then, I appreciate that. She was not doing well, so it was really for the best. And then, immediately you got to go into like clearing up and, cleaning out apartments and spaces and finances and all the kind of stuff you have to do. And then my brother was in town, and he's a wonderful guy, but he brings a certain kind of level of chaos. And we have a smaller home, so everybody was on top of each other for 10 days. And then he left, and I got like sick, oh God, like backaches, headaches. And I'm like, okay. And your history with fasting, and then your history with carnivore, I've been circling. I've done plenty of fasts before in the past. I haven't done a good one in a while, but actually meeting you, and then our friendship, it really kind of motivated me. Once I got this like mild cold, I'm like, all right, I'm going to lean into this. So I just went on water, electrolytes, and lemon for a week. And then per your consultation, I went to bone broths. We spoke about that. And now I'm just bone broth and carnivore. And I am, I think I'm 22, 23 days in. I've dropped 24 pounds already. And like feeling great. The weight's coming right off. I adapted to the carnivore quite easily. Basically you said, meat, salt, lamb, and water, and I'm really going for that. So I want to thank you, because it's been good, and I can still work out, and I've got energy, and I've got focus and so forth. But the transition to carnivore has been great. And I'm very into fitness, and I eat very clean, I'm very healthy. I eat a diversity of foods historically. But I just would always get my linebacker body back. Like I turn around, I'm 255 pounds again. I'm like, shit, how did that happen? And I do a modified keto and all this stuff, but I always just stay so damn thick. But everything is very naturally kind of the weight is falling off, and a little bit of arthritis, maybe from football injury in the ankle and something in the thumb. The ankle's gone, the thumb's much less. So, I appreciate the counsel and our friendship, because it's having a real personal benefit in my life. So thank you.
Oh man, right back at you. Thank you so much. I've got so much from you too. And I think it'll be very interesting to see people microdosing in the carnivore space. Because people go, well, it's not carnivore. Well, this is not a plant supplement, is it really? It's a fungus. And I think that it might just fill in the gaps for a lot of people of things that they might not quite have got there with the carnivore stuff, without having to do any other nonsense like adding back fruit or all this sort of craziness like some people are doing in the carnivore space and not doing very well on it in the end. So thank you so much, man, for all your help over the past month or so, and thank you so much for coming on the podcast. So where do people go? So I understand we're going to set up an affiliate code, and that's Phil, I think. But where do they go?
What you're going to do, it can be uppercase. Actually, do it all uppercase. Just do PHIL. You'll get a 15% discount. And literally the best way, I mean, we're on Instagram and I think TikTok. I'm shit at all that stuff. I got a really good partner who does the social. I mean, I just can't wrap my head around the whole like self-promotion and constantly like, oh my God, I've got to get better at it. But you have children and you see just the phone all the time. You're like, fuck, it's like you want to break from all that. But the website's the best way to get in touch with me. The website, you email through the website, it comes directly to me, and I'll reply to your email. Sometimes we'll set up a free phone consultation if you need some real hand holding. There's a coaching service that you can sign up for. But that's, like you got to realize that like, I want to take up an hour of the guy's time, like 5, 10, 15-minute phone calls. I'll bang those things out. I'll always help people. But honestly, most of the stuff is available on the podcast or the coaching course, or if you just run through the protocols of this podcast, listen to that twice, you kind of get it. It's not, I think one thing with a guy like me is I demystify the process. Like it's not an hard at the microdosing level. Macrodosing is something different. You got to be honest and really prepared for that. But microdosing, it's an expensive supplement that you should notice, and that's really what we're going for. So the website, you can get a hold of me. We're on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and all the other kind of crap. But the website, brainsupreme.co, not com, brainsupreme.co is the best way to get a hold of me.
Okay, well, wherever you're watching or listening to this, then I'll put the links below and you can get in touch with Adam. Adam, thank you so much, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Great conversation.
We'll do a part 2.
Yeah, for sure. We'll go deep.
Music with the people.